This was the first COVID patient that we'd seen. They clearly had it. We'd heard about it. It was this horrible disease that had come in. And regardless of what people tell you, until it's really personal, until it's in front of you, you don't have any understanding of it. And that's probably the biggest gap in logic, unless you know somebody who's firsthand been ill, and I mean meaningfully ill, unless you're taking care of people who are meaningfully ill with it, you don't have an appreciation for how close it is. So it had gone from Wuhan, and it had come to the Northwest, and it had spread, and you could see the evening news, but here it was in front of us, this monster, and it was a 6-year-old boy. The cases that actually have stood out are the ones who had to come back and had significant illness. There are patients who would come in and they'd look perfectly fine. They might have runny nose and congestion and say, look, I feel really weak and exhausted by this, but I'm okay. And we'd have long discussions around, fortunately, what symptoms to watch out for and to return. But I'm amazed at how many of those patients came back critically ill and did wind up going to the ICU. Whereas with a common flu, you could have all but guaranteed they would have been perfectly fine. In that same time frame where they would have been fine with the flu, this population became very ill and had to come back. And in certain subgroups, we know that if they had pulmonary disease and asthma or any kind of life-threatening disease at some point that might resurface, that was a real high-risk population, and we had to be overly aggressive in getting them in the hospital. First, there was a 6-year-old boy, and then the next day there was several people who were ill. And the third day, it was we were awash with patients, and it was all COVID. And then you had people who weren't coming in for their extremes in blood pressure. You had people who were just afraid to come in. You had people who took a second look at, did they really need health care that day? And it really dropped the volumes. But what was coming in was an enormous population of very anxious and worried people with viral symptoms. And that happened within just a few days. And fortunately, there were tents set up, and fortunately, we were deterring that volume early on. But I knew within that first week, we were in for something that was going to be a long haul. And it certainly was worth every effort that the administration had made to create 2 hospitals, one for COVID-positive patients, and certainly one where there was non-COVID disease. And I think all those efforts really paid off more than we can even imagine. And I'm astonished by how folks never abandoned their posts. Nobody called in sick. Nobody took vacation time. Nobody took leaves of absence. People showed up, and it was out of duty that they did that. There wasn't a tech, an administrative partner, a secretary. There wasn't a financial staff member. There wasn't a nurse. There wasn't a doctor on that staff that we had to replace or call to come to work. Working with a group of people who've endured something, we'll all stand a little taller after this. We'll all feel good about what we've done. We will have learned a heck of a lot. And I think we're all going to be just that much more humble and sensible in our practice of medicine.